And now, a story from the Appleseed.
Well, thank you for being here. So, my family came from the Smoky Mountains of North Carolina. If you look up the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, a lot of the land that's now parkland was land that belonged to my family in the 1700s and 1800s. My dad was born there in 1901 in a world in which he had to go hunting so they would have food for their family. But my dad would tell me about that, and he would say, the greatest moment in my life was when I got a job and got my first paycheck. Because he said, when I got that paycheck, the first thing I thought was, I will never freeze to death in the woods again, because now I can buy meat at the grocery store. So when I began to be a teenager and some of my friends were going hunting, like squirrel hunting and rabbit hunting and doing things like that, and I got interested in doing the same thing, my daddy just laughed. He said, why do you want to do something like that? We go to the grocery store. Why do you want to go freeze to death in the woods and then come home with something like that? We can buy good stuff with it. Oh, I was not giving up because my friends were doing that and I was going to do the same thing. Well, I kept on and I kept on and I kept on and I kept on. And when I was 16 years old, one day my daddy got kind of tired of that and he said, okay, why don't you and one of your friends go squirrel hunting? Go out to the farm where I grew up, way back there in the Smoky Mountains, farmland, and then mountains behind that farmland. And you can hunt squirrels, and then we'll have squirrels. I thought, this is going to be the greatest thing in the world. I'm going to go with my friend David, and we're going to shoot a whole bunch of squirrels, and we're going to be great hunters, and we're going to save our family money because they won't have to go spend money at the grocery store. It's going to be wonderful. So the day came. It was Friday afternoon. We got my daddy's old work car, and my friend David and I drove out. It was where my Uncle Frank now lived, on the farm where my dad grew up. And we drove that old car way up into the woods because we were going to spend the night sleeping in the car. One of us stretched out on the front seat, one of us stretched out on the back seat. So we would be there in the morning, and we would be up and in the woods before the squirrels got up. So early the next morning, before daylight, David and I got up, and we headed out into the woods, and we were there when the squirrels first started moving around. And by luck or crook or some kind of providential, happening, we ended up shooting 5 squirrels. Well, that afternoon, we started home, and David and I were going to divide up the 5 squirrels, but you know what? He told me he didn't want any of them. And I could have all 5 to take home. And I thought, oh, that'll be wonderful. That'll make a perfect supper for us. We'll have 5 squirrels for our family for our supper tonight. And so I got home and I very proudly showed my daddy that I had 5 squirrels. He said, oh, this is wonderful. This is going to be so good. We'll have a dinner like I used to have when I was a little boy. It'll remind me of all kinds of things. It'll be so good. I haven't had good squirrels for supper in such a long time. He said, first of all, you got to clean the squirrels. I said, what? He said, first, you got to clean the squirrels. And I said, who has to clean the squirrels? And he said, who shot the squirrels? I said, I did. Then you have to clean the squirrels. Come on, I'll show you how. And he took me around behind our house, and he came out with a knife and a dishpan. He said, now pick up one of the squirrels, take the knife, and you cut it just through its skin, right around the middle. And I did that. He said, now, get your fingers inside the skin on this side, and get your fingers inside the skin on this side, and then pull. And I started pulling, and it was turning the skin of the squirrel wrong side out and stripping it off, like pulling your pajamas off from both ends. And about that time, our little cat came around the corner of the house and saw what was happening. It looked like a little skinned cat, and that cat turned and ran up a tree as far as it could go. And then I got the skin all pulled off, and here it was hanging on this end, it was hanging on this end, and then I had to cut its feet off. And then, if you think this is horrible to listen to, think about how much more horrible it was to have to do it when I was a 16-year-old kid. And then I had to cut the squirrel's head off, and I had to take out its insides and cut it up. And when it was all done, there was almost nothing left. It was just tiny little bones with little bits. And there were 4 more squirrels to go after that. And I had to skin and clean all the squirrels and cut them up, and there was a little pile of bones with little bits of meat on it. And my daddy said, "This is so good. It's going to be so good for supper." And I thought, And we took the cut up squirrels inside to my mother, and she was going to fix our supper. And she made fried squirrel, and it had white gravy all over the fried squirrel. And we had to go with it white hominy and white cornbread. It was a totally colorless, awful-looking meal. And we sat down at the table and looking at that food. Do you know what my daddy dared to do? He dared to actually ask the blessing and give thanks for it. And then he started to eat. "Oh, this is so good. It reminds me of my childhood. And, oh, it is so good. Oh, dig in, dig in." And my little brother and my mother and I just sat there and we stared at our plates. And then I said, "Mother, do you think the grocery store's still open?" She said, "I think it is." And without even talking about it, my mother and my little brother Joe and I all pushed our plates over to our daddy. And we went out and got in the car, and we went to the grocery store, and we came home with wonderful gourmet TV dinners. And it was the very best dinner I ever had. So to this day, if somebody asks me, "Well, you grew up in the Smoky Mountains. Do you go hunting a lot?" I said, "I do. I go hunting almost every week. I hunt for the grocery store."
Thanks for joining us for a story from the Appleseed.